When you can't stop thinking about someone, they own you, even when they're gone. The Stoics warned us, obsession is not love, it's a chain around your mind. Every time you replay their face, their words, their silence, you feed that chain. And soon, you'll lose 3 things no man should ever give away. Let's break down what happens when you make someone the center of your thoughts. 1. The illusion of connection. You think that by constantly thinking about her, you're keeping the connection alive. You believe your attention keeps her spirit close, that your thoughts somehow bridge the distance. But here's the Stoic truth: your mind is lying to you. Thinking about someone doesn't connect you to them. It disconnects you from yourself. It takes the energy that could rebuild your peace, your focus, your dignity, and pours it into a shadow. Epictetus once said, "When you are attached to something outside your control, you become its slave." And that's what happens when you can't stop thinking about someone who's no longer thinking about you. You're not nurturing love, you're nurturing dependency. You're not holding on to them, you're holding on to the pain of losing them. The illusion feels powerful, it feels noble, even romantic, like your loyalty means something. But what's really happening is you're building a shrine in your mind and worshiping a memory that cannot love you back. Your thoughts become prayers to a ghost. And the more you think, the more you suffer. This is the silent trap of emotional attachment. You think it's connection, but it's consumption. You think it's devotion, but it's self-erasure. And slowly, without noticing, you start to vanish behind your thoughts. Your world shrinks around one person. Their absence defines your mood. Their silence dictates your day. That's not love. That's captivity. But here's the thing: the Stoics understood. When you stop chasing the illusion, you begin to see reality. When you stop thinking about them, you remember who you are. In the next part, we'll uncover the first thing you lose when someone occupies your thoughts: your inner balance. 2. The loss of inner balance. The moment someone starts living rent-free in your mind, your inner world begins to tilt. Your thoughts no longer orbit around purpose, they orbit around a person. And when that happens, balance collapses quietly. You start the day with good intentions, focus, clarity, calm, but one memory, one song, one notification sends you spiraling. Your peace becomes fragile, easily broken by the echoes of someone who isn't even there. The Stoics taught that the greatest form of wealth is ataraxia, inner tranquility. It's not just calmness, it's command. It's the ability to stay centered while the world shifts around you. But when you keep thinking about someone, you hand them that command. You give them the power to stir your emotions without even being present. That's the true cost of attachment. Not heartbreak, but imbalance. You become reactive instead of reflective. You let external forces pull you like waves instead of standing like a rock. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Yet every time you overthink her, you surrender that power. You let your emotions drift where your reason should anchor you. And soon, you find yourself exhausted by thoughts you never invited, haunted by scenarios that never happened. It's not love that consumes you. It's obsession disguised as care. And every thought you spend on her is one less thought spent on yourself, on your growth, your peace, your mission. This is the paradox of emotional imbalance. The more you think about her, the less you exist in your own story. You stop living intentionally. You start reacting unconsciously. The Stoics didn't preach detachment to escape emotion. They practiced it to master it. Because when your emotions depend on another person, you lose the foundation of self-control, the very essence of Stoicism. In the next chapter, we'll explore the second thing you lose when you keep thinking about someone, your time, and how the Stoics turn time into their greatest weapon. 3. The waste of time and energy. Time is the one currency you never earn back. Yet when someone lives in your mind, you start spending your time on what does not return anything. You replay conversations. You overanalyze their silence. You wonder what they meant, what they're thinking, what they feel. Hours pass, days pass, and nothing changes in reality. Only your mind keeps circling itself. The Stoics were very clear about this. Attachment is not measured by how much you love, but by how much time you lose. When you think of someone repeatedly, your life slowly shifts into waiting mode. Waiting for their message, waiting for their attention, waiting for their validation to make you feel whole again. But here's the brutal truth. The person you are constantly thinking about is not spending their time thinking about you. And that imbalance slowly destroys your self-worth. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Your suffering is not coming from what happened. It comes from the story you keep replaying, rewriting, reshaping in your mind. Every minute lost to thinking about them is a minute stolen from your goals, your discipline, your growth, your mission. This is why Stoics valued silence. Silence isn't emptiness. It is space dash. Space to rebuild yourself, to recalibrate your emotions, to return to center. But when your mind is constantly occupied by someone else, silence becomes impossible. Your thoughts become noise. Your life becomes background to the obsession. So ask yourself, if your time is life, then who are you giving your life to? Not through words, not through actions, but through thought. Because thought is the deepest form of devotion, and when you give someone your constant thoughts, you're giving them the core of your existence. In the next chapter, we confront what comes next, how constant thinking leads to emotional dependency, and how that dependency turns you into someone you no longer recognize. 4. Emotional dependency and losing yourself. When you think about someone constantly, it doesn't just drain your time, it reshapes your identity. At first, it feels harmless, just curiosity, just interest, just checking in emotionally. But slowly, without noticing, your sense of self begins to orbit around them. Your mood depends on whether they texted back, how they said a certain word, the tone of their voice, their attention, or lack of it. Your emotional stability becomes outsourced. And here lies the danger. When someone else controls your emotional weather, you lose your inner climate. You stop being the main character in your own life. You become a reaction to someone else's actions. Stoicism teaches that a man must guard his inner state more fiercely than his physical possessions. Because once your inner world is compromised, everything outside collapses. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You become what you give your attention to." If your attention is chained to them, you begin to shape yourself to fit what you think they want. You start behaving in ways you normally wouldn't. You reply faster than you want to. You tolerate things that drain you. You bend your boundaries. You shrink your values. You silence your needs. You slowly become less of yourself to keep them. But here is the paradox. The more you lose yourself to keep someone, the less they respect you. Because respect is drawn to self-possession, to presence, to grounded emotional independence. When you revolve around another person, you broadcast, "I am not enough without you." And nothing kills attraction faster than that. Your value is not in chasing. Your worth is not in attachment. Your identity is not meant to be borrowed from another. To love someone deeply is not the problem. The problem is when that love replaces your self-respect. In the next chapter, we face what happens after this dependency forms. The emotional withdrawal that hurts more than any breakup. 5. The quiet strength of detachment. There comes a moment in a man's life when he realizes that not every connection deserves to be held on to. Not every emotion deserves to be indulged, and not every bond is meant to last. This realization is not cold, it is not heartless, it is simply truth. Detachment is often misunderstood. Many think it means you stop caring, that you become distant, numb, or emotionally unavailable. But true Stoic detachment is something different entirely. It is the ability to care deeply without being controlled. You can love someone, but you do not collapse when they leave. You can desire success, but you do not destroy yourself when progress is slow. You can give your heart, but you do not place your identity inside someone else's hands. Detachment is not the absence of feeling. It is the control of feeling. Because what destroys most men is not attachment itself, but the fear of losing what they're attached to. When you fear loss, you start to beg, you start to chase. You start to trade your dignity for attention, your peace for distraction, your purpose for temporary comfort. And every time you give away a part of yourself for something outside of your control, you weaken the core of your character. A Stoic man learns the art of stepping back, not to withdraw from life, but to participate in it without drowning. He knows how to observe his emotions like waves. They rise, they fall, but he remains the ocean. And when a man reaches this understanding, something shifts. He no longer fears being alone. He no longer seeks validation. He no longer needs permission to be himself. And ironically, this is when others are drawn to him, because the world is starving for people who can love without clinging, who can give without losing themselves, who can remain grounded in a storm. This is the beginning of real power, the quiet, unshakable strength of a man who no longer fears the emptiness within. He has made peace with it, and because of that, he is finally free. 6. The power of self-sufficiency. When a man is no longer driven by the fear of losing others, something remarkable begins to awaken inside him. Self-sufficiency. The ability to stand firmly, quietly, on the foundation of his own being. Most men never reach this stage. They are taught from a young age to seek completion outside themselves, a relationship to feel validated, a group to feel accepted, a partner to feel whole. But a man who depends on others for identity is always at risk of collapse. Because if your self-worth comes from the outside, then the outside world controls you. The Stoics understood this deeply. To depend on others for your sense of self is to place the keys to your inner fortress in someone else's hands. And once you do that, your peace is no longer your own. But self-sufficiency doesn't mean isolation. It doesn't mean rejecting others or walking through life without connection. It simply means you do not rely on those connections to define you. You choose to stand firm in your values. You choose to build your own stability. You choose to be the source, not the seeker. There is a quiet power in a man who can say, "I enjoy your presence, but I do not need it. I value this connection, but I do not lose myself in it. I walk with you, but I do not depend on you." This is the kind of man others respect, because he carries himself with awareness. He is grounded, deliberate, and unshaken by the shifting winds of emotion or circumstance. And when life becomes difficult, as it inevitably will, he does not crumble. He does not collapse into despair. He returns inward. He relies on his own mind, his own discipline, his own inner world. The man who is self-sufficient is not alone. He is simply complete. And this completeness is magnetic. It draws in relationships that are based on respect, not dependency, connection, not clinging, harmony, not chaos. But this transformation leads to a question, one that every man eventually must face. What do you build your inner foundation upon? Because self-sufficiency is not the end. It is the doorway. And beyond that doorway is Chapter 7, where a man discovers the one thing that anchors him for life. 7. The unmovable center. There comes a moment in every man's journey where he realizes something profound. No one is coming to save him. Not the person he cares about, not the world, not fate, not love. And at first, that realization feels heavy, almost painful, but then slowly, it becomes liberating. Because when a man understands that everything he needs must be found within, he begins to search for something deeper, his center. Not an identity built on achievements, not his reputation, not validation, admiration, or approval, not even the relationships he holds dear, but something more still, more silent, more permanent. The Stoics described it as the inner citadel, the quiet place within yourself that cannot be touched by the external world. This is where your reason lives, your discipline, your will, your values. It is the most private part of you, the part that cannot be broken unless you hand it away. When you always think about someone, when your mind revolves around another person, your center shifts. You begin orbiting around them. Your identity becomes gravitationally pulled into theirs. Their moods dictate yours. Their presence or absence controls your emotional climate. This is how a strong man becomes unbalanced. This is how dignity erodes, not in loud moments, but in quiet ones. But when you return to your center, everything changes. You start speaking slower, acting more deliberately, choosing what aligns with your core, not with impulse or fear. Your presence becomes calm, not anxious. Your heart becomes steady, not desperate. And paradoxically, this is when people begin to respect you more. This is when they feel your value, because you are no longer seeking. You are no longer clinging. You are simply being. Love becomes cleaner. Attachment becomes lighter. Connection becomes truthful. The world does not sway you anymore. You move through it with stillness that cannot be disrupted. This is the gift you gain when you stop overthinking someone else. You return home to yourself. And once a man finds his center, he does not lose it again. So remember this: when your mind constantly revolves around someone else, you lose yourself in the orbit. But when you return to your own center, your thoughts, your purpose, your peace, you become a man who cannot be shaken. The world respects the man who is rooted in himself, not the man who chases, not the man who clings, but the man who stands still and chooses what aligns with his values. If this message spoke to you, take a breath and return inward. Your strength was never gone. It was only waiting for you to come back home. Stay steady, stay grounded, stay you.